So let's have a look at water purification processes. Interesting. Yeah, let's have a little go with that. All right, got these, got those. Excellent. So we understand the current techniques that are done for cleaning water. But what about introducing some new processes of cleaning water? How might that look? Well, we'll take a vat. I drew it circular. It doesn't have to be. Let's take another one. Now, what do we understand about space? Or a vat? Well, it takes water and it separates it, doesn't it, into a gas. If we take a cup of water and we put it into space, it separates it into hydrogen and oxygen. Fundamentally, because of the lack of pressure. So what if we stored water into a vat and decompressed it? A bit like space. It's going to release the pressure, which is going to release the liquid into a gas format. Any heavy debris in there, are they going to sit into the vat and the gas? Meaning that you should be able to clean these out easier, right? If you had something in there that could withstand that and remove these debris. Well, now what happens to bacteria or anything else in that process? Well, doesn't usually bacteria grow in water? But if you squeeze it all out and you remove it and you make a vacuum, which is space, what are you going to do to the bacteria, do you reckon? Anything in this, if we move it into gas. And then let's say we pump the gas into another biome and then add pressure back into the system. Are we going to create the water again? By decompressing and compressing, decompressing and compressing, and then moving this over. Shouldn't we purify water? What happens to the harder materials, the minerals and everything else in that process? Are you going to remove them? Is it going to be left behind in this decompression process? I mean, there's more to the story than let's just take a cup of water to space. And with this, will we make purer water? Does it clean the water? That's a question that I've got. Big question. And logically, everything screams at me, yes, it's going to clean the water. If there are any hard materials left over in the water, and we've converted that into a gas, because these are harder, they're going to stay behind. The debris will stay behind in the vat. We just want the gas. We want it as water to begin with, so we start off with water, and plus debris, so if we just put debs. Once we factor in the process of space, which will separate both of these, essentially they say it boils away, anything else that is not a liquid, and if there are certain bacteria in there, aren't these going to pull apart? And for once, are we going to extract the nutrients from these things and wash them over to here? And then when we recompress it, but not in the same format, is it going to still be alive? That's a question and a half, isn't it? We want the water. We don't want the debris. We don't want the bacteria or anything else. What happens if you keep on going with this decompression and we keep on removing the pressure? Because in space, if we take a cup of water up, it separates and they say that it boils away. Technically, the bonds, there's not enough pressure to keep the bonds together, so they separate. I like the process of space when we understand pressure being star. And we can say is depress is black hole. Do you ever wonder whether the universe in its cycles is doing this to purify everything? The purification process, that when you've got a lot of stars, a lot of pressure, a lot of this, a lot of that, a lot of mixing, a lot of churning, you are creating a lot of impurities, so to speak, to a point where it becomes so impure. And then when you begin to decompress it, and if we think of a black hole as being onion layers, that at this stage it breaks apart. Well, we have space. You could say 1 minus, and it can pull apart oxygen and hydrogen. The closer into the black hole, it might start to separate these again further until you reach back all the way back to hydrogen, of pulling these bonds, and in reverse process of depressurizing and pressurizing, and then you're left with no more impurities. This way, well, you're mixing it up, it's getting churned up, everything's getting to the point where it's on the verge of being not a self-fulfilling prophecy at the end of the day. And you can understand that this mixing up too much, everything gets complex. You can also look at this as life as well. It gets too much life, too much extremophiles, too many of these things. It's on the negative side of it. Too much of that, not a good thing. The life forms that come together, intelligent life formats that come together, well, these ones are success. Depending on whether they actually successfully are able to survive the last layering of the supermassive black hole before the universe repeats again. These ones would be successful and they would become pure life forms. Away from all of the rest of the impurities. Because yes, as it's getting more and more toxic, it's getting more and more deadlier for you to land on a planet. And if you've got a lot of life forms, especially when it's coming together towards the end of the cycle, that risk is increasing. Not only do you need to protect yourself, your immune system is only going to be able to do so much. Life is going to get more and more advanced. It's going to want to bind into you. It could become very intelligent to the point where it starts binding into you, and then that's extinction in another aspect. However, you protect yourself from that. You protect yourself from the cycle. You protect yourself from all of these things, and then it begins to purify, and then another cycle is born with more lack of impurities, and it's a more purer universe at the start of summer, which we could say is when we start to see the emergence of stars. These become very pure. Not much life is about. A bit more safer for you to be about. A bit more safer. And the process will happen again and again, and you get more and more advanced. Interesting. That's a very interesting thing. Now, taking this with the water process, and if we mimic these processes that are happening, are we able to purify water with that? Closer to a black hole, man, wouldn't it be great if you could bring it all the way back and then fuse it back together into this? No life or debris would ever be able to survive that until they all reach hydrogen ratio. And then if you combine those to create oxygen from all of the debris inside there, that would be a great achievement to reach that process. Because then you'll have the purest water that you've ever seen. And then maybe you can factor in, this is why I'm asking the question about on some other videos, whether you can take a pill. You know, part pill for your mineral content, a bit like elephants do sometimes. Lovely, wonderful. You're getting what you need, but not too much of it that you're overdosing on it. Overdosing, never good. There's always got to be that balance, right? Too much of something is bad for you, and not enough of something is also equally as bad for you. So it shows you that there is this balance between the two extremes. To be in the middle ratio, it's quite nice to be in that area. If you're too much this way, not good. Too much this way, not good. Somewhere in the middle, I'd say that's good. I'd say that's very good, wouldn't you? So perhaps maybe you can't create a black hole right now. Maybe you can't create a star right now. Or maybe you can, but it's just not there. But can you utilize the -1 to almost get your foot in the door of being able to remove water as a liquid, separate it into a gas, Anything heavy, anything that's rock, anything else like that. If you take rock to space, what does it do? It probably still stays in its same structure. Maybe it fractures down. But usually it almost looks like space wrings out moisture and then separates it into gas. Easier for the star to deal with, I suppose, and easier for planets to deal with gas than a rock. But even still, you extract this, you leave the diamond behind, and you extract the purity from it, which in this aspect is the gas. The gas seems to be more pure. That's another thing I was talking about, was when diamonds are forged, what's extracted from that leaves the shell behind? That would seem more valuable for me. The diamond itself? It's a bit like a comet. If you could grab hold of a comet before it gets close to the sun, put a large balloon over it, and when it then allow it to go closer to the sun, it's going to fill up with gases. Well, is the rock really valuable? No. What about the gases that are on it? Those are valuable, because what can you do with those gases? Well, it depends on where you are on this cycle, what you're trying to reach. You're trying to make stars? Yeah, I'd say gases work well with that. If you're trying to make black holes, well, perhaps then rocks become something. But until then, I think gases are the prize. And what's it like to drink pure water? Nice. What happens if you give pure water, decent water, to plants? Sure, it's going to have its problems, but then you're in control of what nutrients goes into it. And then if you get those ratios just right, at the right moments for these nutrients to hit in, and also at other times, probably not too many of these nutrients. And again, what is nutrients? Well, life forms, huh? Are life forms good for us? No. No, they're bloody not. Pathogens and all sorts in the water. You drink that, you're very sick. I think you're going to end up dying from it. We take a look at some very poor nations that are around, and when the water begins to... When there's a larger amount of water, it's less likely that you're going to have the pathogens, because they're not going to be able to outnumber that particular area, and there's a lot of dynamics going in to keep this very clean. However, when that soup starts to shrink down, it concentrates it. When it becomes danger, too many pathogens, too much life in there, and you drink it and it causes some very badness. And sometimes some of this stuff just cannot be boiled away. In some circumstances it can. But if life gets more and more intelligent, even on the small scale as it does on the big scale, we're running into problems. You'll lead to extinction. And in space, water purification is one of the most golden prizes that there is, because it is your fuel source. Food next, but water mainly. You take care of the water, the food will look after itself, so to speak. So just by depressurizing and then reintroducing the pressure into another vat, how much more pure will that water be? So pure. Nice. Do you need to fill it up with all sorts of chemicals and everything else? Not chemicals, such heavy materials, mineral content. I don't see elephants eating the minerals all the time. They do it now and then. Seasonal, it almost appears to be, where they go in and have a good chop down on this, and for the rest of the time that seems to satisfy them. And then they go back to this and then have another go with that. It shows that there's a very careful balance. The elephants seem to be more intelligent when it comes to taking nutrients, minerals. They're not overdoing it, although they could, but they choose not to. Now that's an interesting thing. That shows a high level of intelligence. Whereas we're also intelligent, but we also overdo it with certain things, and then we're putting into our water way too much of this stuff. And then we have to ask whether it's good or bad. Now we'd have to follow elephants quite a way and see whether how they live, how their organs function. I mean, they're pretty damn big as it is. This would be interesting. And is some of our health related on what we intake and we overdo stuff? So I once read on some minerals, I think it was, that you can overdose on it. Certain minerals. I think it was somebody else was talking about this. Richard Feynman, that's how you pronounce his name. He was saying that you can overdo it on certain types of vitamin D, which is fascinating, because the body tends to know when you've had enough of it if you experience sun. I think it was vitamin D. Don't quote me. It was particularly to do with sunlight hitting you, and then the body knows when you've had enough. Therefore, it can shut it out. But if you're taking vitamin D as a supplement, you can overdo it. There's no end to it. And then what does that do? Why does the body know that we should not have too much of this, and then it blocks it out, causing a different reaction, this, that, and the other? And it knows when to accept this. And therefore the body, if you were to read the body as it is intelligent, even autonomously, it's very intelligent. It knows when you've had enough, and it doesn't want to give you too much of this. And why does it do that? What does it know? Clearly it knows something, because if it could absorb this all the time, it would, and it chooses not to. Now that's fascinating. So therefore, it's not choosing it because of, there isn't much around. No, it's doing it for a particular reason. It's trying to hold in the balance. Why is it trying to hold in the balance? So it must know that if too much of it is bad, and it must know that not enough of it is bad, and it found the medium, the middle. And should we follow that as a rule of thumb? We need strong species. Why do we need strong species? Why is everything all about strength in this? What's it all for? And are we reading it correctly? Because we can overdo it. So water, purification, I think it starts there. And the friendlier the water, the purer the water, well, does that mean that we can keep it free from pathogens and bacteria? And we often know that these don't do us any good. We know that it doesn't. And then we need to up the ante and put other things in there, which have side effects to them. Okay, not right away, but a build-up over time. They have side effects. Wouldn't it be nice to get rid of the side effects and have pure water? That would be an interesting thing. And in a gas format, when the time comes to add the pressure to it, you then have vats of water that are stored into gas. That's an interesting thing. And it also keeps you on a life support system that if you have lots of water but are in need of gas, you now have gas. If you have too much gas and are in need of water, you can convert it back. And also, it then runs on to, can you purify air this way? That's another thing. Can we purify air in the same process? Utilizing the same process? That's an interesting thing. And then it makes me look at space. Is it by design? Because we never ask the question as to why does the cup of water respond this way in space? And when you really think about that, it's intelligent. Even space itself, this stuff that seems to be empty, is incredibly intelligent, that it's like, okay, a percentage towards purification. Without this process, life would be abundant in space, wouldn't it? And then there's a limit. So there is a place for this stuff to come together, and there is a place where it really shouldn't. And how does that help you as a species? Well, if you go to space, you're quite protected in that. That's pretty protective. You almost got one layer of being protected. Interesting. Perhaps not without a spacesuit, but with a spacesuit, with the right equipment, you have some protections. That's interesting. You're more safer there than you are here. And especially if things start getting more and more impure. So the current systems that are utilized for cleaning water, I once spoke with a scientist from Anglian Water, and they were telling me about how they were cleaning the water. But again, I don't know. It seems like a lot of work, a lot of energy, a lot of stuff to be doing, when this one seemed a bit more simpler for me. This process, depressurization versus pressurization. What would survive that? I'm not sure the pathogens would. I'm not sure the bacteria wholeheartedly would. Because it's technically, sweat or dried the environment to a point. Well, how are they going to live in that? Because doesn't this become dry in that aspect? The gas, separate. What creates wetness? Pressure in gases creates wet, which equals life. Interesting. Which then gets you onto another one. Do we need moisture? Yes. Can we survive without it for a bit? That's also yes. That's an interesting thing. And via doing this, how much can we remove or alleviate? Yeah, it's a fascinating thing. especially when it comes to bacteria? Why is it more so in the winter than the summer? Is that because it's damp? The air is damp and makes these things possible to get around easier, as opposed to the summer. Interesting. Is it more drier? Some I might argue that it's more humid in certain aspects, but a lot less, more so in the winter. Damp air, damp situations. Damp requires mold growth. I mean, sure, in houses it's hard to deal with damp, but in space, if you get some mold growth, depressurize it. Pretty sure you can remove it then much more easier. Bit like a sponge with certain life forms, isn't it? Depressurize it and squeeze the nutrients from them, as opposed to them squeezing the nutrients from you. Isn't that a reverse? Cool, what a cycle. But anyway, what do you reckon to that? What do you reckon? Just a simple way of purifying water. And then also, yes, you're going to need minerals and nutrients from this type of stuff. But when you need it, and what is the science and data behind that? And where's the too much? Because we're not one size fits all. We're not one size fits all. We're all very different. And again, with AI put into that, look at how you can really target individuals as opposed to averages. Because I don't think any of us are really average. And if we are, you're lucky. You fit in all the books. But if you're not, and then this opens Pandora's box to medication as well. If you can target it here to the amount of nutrients that you need based on your size, this, that, and the other, the body tends to take care of the rest, but we don't want to create too much waste. And again, we can save it for when we do need it, as opposed to take too much of it and then waste it through us. And then what does this have an impact on our bodies, our internal organs? And then if you look at if we do get sick and you've got this same database, targeted medication at just the right ratio based on your unique average, I suppose. Your average size of what you usually are most of the time. Fluctuations in between. And then better medication targeting, I think, gives better outcomes, better success rates. Because if it's too much based on the average, then it might not work as good, or maybe it works too well. And what does that end up doing? And if it doesn't work enough, again, it was good until it gets you to a point. Blindfolded up until a point, and then you have some sort of AI or technology, tech, helps you to get it more targeted, which then should lead to better success. Overall, probably not sure I spelled that correctly, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Come on, spellings, we get hung up on those, but still. And then how do we look as a species going forward with that? And then what does nature need? Because it's all about the optimal ratio. Too much of something bad, not enough of something also bad. Finding that happy medium. Now, evolution can find this naturally and rebuild life around it. But it also gives you the same capabilities for you to be able to look at it. If you want to look at it, if you want to experiment with it, if you want to do something about it, it clearly gives you all of this. Higher power and anything else, God, code, spiritual, whatever you want to talk about. It gives you these same capabilities. A little bit more difficult to achieve it, and then it makes you give credit to evolution as well, doesn't it? Wow, that's interesting. You worked hard. Its way is slightly different to achieve it, but I think it follows the same path. Finding this ratio. The middle. Always the middle. Not too much, not too little. And what might be too little for somebody else might be too much for someone else. And what's too little for someone else might be too much, vice versa. So yeah, it's a very interesting to be in the middle. I would say so. So yes, this is a beautiful thing. Very beautiful. Anyway, going to be moving on to something else, but it's just water, depressurization, convert it into a gas, We're following the script of the universe. So stars and pressurization, depressurization, and black holes. The middle, the medium, is gas. Each one requires the other. Interesting, really. Just a roundabout sort of way that it reaches these things. But either or, both require gas. Both make gas. Both require gas. Interesting, really, isn't it? Process from one middle end. Nice, I suppose, if you want to call it that, but it's in an overall cycle. So there's no beginning and there's no end. It's just a cycle and a continuation. Yeah, I think I'm going to leave it there. So that's just water. And it leads on to other things too. And again, it can be wrong. Good. And it can also be closer to the truth. Also good. It's about eliminating the factors and then another piece of technology until eventually you're creating black holes and you are creating stars. Oh, then it gets really interesting then. Because you want to live in the middle of that. Because this will keep you going, because it's a self-fulfilling prophecy inside a self-fulfilling prophecy now, with a lot of self-fulfilling prophecies. Beautiful. Oh yes. Anyway, gonna leave it there. Bye-bye.